What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, August 1st edition of the MLB Sims video. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. We have a big 14-game slate tonight. It is trade deadline day, so some things are definitely going to look different by the time lock rolls around. The trade deadline is at 6 p.m. Eastern, so teams have a few more hours to make moves. We've already seen some that will impact tonight's slate as far as players being traded, and there's almost certainly more to come. So in addition to the usual caveats of ownership changes, lineup changes, all of that, also team changes in play for tonight's slate. But that doesn't mean we can't take an early look at this, walk through how to use the Sims tool and how you can use it to improve your lineups, and also take a quick look at what we're seeing for tonight's slate. We do have another game in Coors Field tonight. There are weather concerns, but as of right now, I'd be playing it. Obviously, that can change between now and lock or now and the time the game starts, but that also is something to pay attention to for today. So we're going to start by looking at the top simulated lineups. As usual, I simulated 2,000 lineups. They're all 5-2 stacks, uploaded my projections, run the simulation, and the tool is simulating the 2,000 lineups against each other. You can put up to 10,000 lineups in. That is a new improvement that we made. You also can select the payout structure as far as what percentage of the field goes to first. I went with 30% because the flagship tournament on DraftKings tonight is once again $300K prize pool, $100K to first. So we are simulating for that payout structure. And what we're seeing here when we look at the stacks is we're seeing a mix, but also, not surprisingly, we're getting to the Padres in Colorado. They are the clear top stack if the weather cooperates, but we do have some other teams mixed in here as well. Starting at the top with a 5-man Houston stack, 2-man San Diego, two pretty expensive teams, and that is going to force us down the pitcher list. We're getting to two relatively low-owned pitchers in Miles Mikolas and Josiah Gray. Neither one is exciting. There's nothing I can say to make them exciting, but if they happen to pitch well, they are opening up a lot of upside for our bats, where we have a Mitch Garver one-off from Texas, Jose Abreu, Jeremy Pena, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, and Corey Julks from the Astros. Obviously, love getting to Alvarez and Tucker in particular. And then we're getting Machado and Kim from the Padres in Colorado. Next, we have a 5-man San Diego stack, 2-man Tampa Bay. Lance Lynn, one of the most popular pitchers on the slate. He's only $7,900 taking on the Oakland Athletics. Fourth highest strikeout percentage on the slate, second highest median projection as of right now. Josiah Gray, again, showing up, pitcher that you're not excited about, but he does have a decent matchup with the Brewers. There are strikeouts in that lineup. It's not a great lineup overall. So at low ownership, it does make sense why he's getting in some of these top lineups. From San Diego, we're getting to Sanchez, Kim, Bogarts, Tatis, and Grisham. So plenty of upside there. Jose Siri, good power bat. He's cheap. Doesn't get on base a lot, but when he hits the ball, he typically hits it really far. That's kind of all we care about for DFS. Isaac Paredes gives you plenty of power as well. And then we have the Pete Alonso one-off from the Mets. Speaking of the Mets, our third best simulated ROI lineup is a 5-man Mets stack with 2-man Padres, Lance Lynn and Josiah Gray once again, Francisco Alvarez from the right side, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, Daniel Vogelbach, and Brett Beatty, all from the left side. It is a good matchup for them tonight. They're taking on Zach Greinke in Kansas City, so not a great ballpark to hit in, but Greinke has given up power to both sides of the plate this year, particularly to the left side. We do have 4 left-handed bats in there, and then we have the Bobby Witt one-off from the other side of that game. Witt obviously is always a high upside shortstop. Now we get a bunch of 5-man San Diego stacks. Here we get the 5-man Oakland, 2-man San Diego. This one's interesting to look at just because Oakland is going up against Lance Lynn. The game is in LA, where home runs are a big problem, and Lynn does have home run issues. Obviously, Oakland's lineup is very weak, but it is likely to be predominantly left-handed, which is interesting given Lynn's drastic splits against lefties. So from a leverage standpoint, this is a really interesting lineup, and it's not that surprising that you're seeing Oakland in some of these top lineups, because even though they're one of the lowest probability stacks on the slate, you do have a lot of things working in your favor. If they do well, 1, they're low owned themselves. 2, they're really inexpensive, so you can get really good teams around them. And then 3, 40 to 50% of the field is likely to have Lance Lynn tonight. So it doesn't matter what offenses they have. If Oakland hits a bunch of home runs against Lance Lynn, those teams are just not in contention anymore. So even though they are a low probability team, especially with your higher percentage to first payout structures, it does make sense for Oakland to be climbing the list. Here in this top one, we have Spencer Strider, the clear top projected pitcher on the slate. He's expensive, but you can get to him with Oakland. Josiah Gray, low-owned value pitcher. Soderstrom, Seth Brown, who is the top Oakland bat. He's the only actual good left-handed hitter on Oakland. So he's a good one-off. He's good mini stacks, but actually really like him in particular. So you're getting to him, Nick Allen, Ramon Laureano, and Aledmus Diaz. You have Juan Soto and Hassan Kim from the Padres. Obviously happy with those two. And then the Adolis Garcia one-off gives you plenty of upside. So that's an interesting team to look at. Now we can select the top 150 and look at our stack exposures and player exposures. Starting with the stacks, we once again have the Padres at the top. They were my highest owned team last night. They were the highest team in the Sims tool. Everything set up perfectly for them. That game started late, started at 11 p.m. Eastern. No other offense had really done much of anything. It set up perfectly for the Padres, who weren't actually that popular, to win the slate, but they didn't come through against Austin Gomber. They only scored 3 runs. Obviously, it happens. It's baseball. But they once again have a 20 to 25% chance of being the top scoring stack tonight. So, yeah, they're going to fail a lot, but they pretty clearly stand out as the top stack against Peter Lambert in Colorado. The Rockies are coming in second, 9% 5-man stack exposure. Pittsburgh coming in third. Both of those teams are very inexpensive. So when you go to them, you can get good mini stacks with them. You can get good pitching. Again, Spencer Strider's $12,500. So being able to pay up for him is really nice. Fourth, we have Texas, who is still a good offense. They are missing Corey Seager and Jonah Heim, so they're not as good as usual, but that does mean that you get some cheap bats moving into better lineup positions. We don't have the lineup yet, but good chance you're going to have Jankowski and Grossman in the top 6 in this order. And while they're not the most exciting hitters, they are cheap. They would be in good lineup spots, and they do let you offset some of the salaries of the better hitters in this lineup. They have a good matchup against Jesse Schultens and the Chicago White Sox. So happy to get there. We already mentioned the Mets. They're coming in 5th. As far as individual player exposures go, Lance Lynn at the top in that matchup with Oakland, projected about 40% ownership. We're getting to 55%, so a bit over the field, but nothing too crazy. He's just mispriced, and this is a slate where a lot of the pitcher pricing is correct. So when guys stand out as being underpriced for their strikeout upside, like Lynn, they end up looking really good. He's got that matchup with the A's where there will probably be a bunch of left-handed bats, which he has struggled with, but most of them are below average hitters. So hopefully he can still win out. Next, we're getting to the Padres bats. Tatis at 50%, Machado, Grisham, Sanchez, Bogarts, Kim, all just pulling 30 to 50% ownership. Andrew Heaney, projected for about 22% ownership. We're getting about 30, so nothing too drastic there. He's another one where he certainly has his flaws as he takes on the Chicago White Sox. He hasn't completed 6 innings in a start since the end of May. He gives up a lot of home runs, but he does have a 23.5% strikeout percentage and a decent strikeout matchup at a price tag where you're just not taking on that much risk. So it's not surprising to see him getting in the lineups. Then we get more Soto and Cronenworth. Interesting that we're only getting the 27% Spencer Strider. He's projected about 40% ownership. He's $12,500. So the price tag is prohibitive. But the thing you need to keep in mind is that there are 14 games on this slate. There's a lot of cheap offenses you can get to, a lot of cheap mini stacks you can get to. So it's not actually that difficult to get him into lineups. Most teams, you're going to be able to stack them with Strider if you want to. You may just have to use some guys from the bottom of the order that are inexpensive. So it is a little bit surprising, a little bit interesting to me that we're getting below the field on Strider. But, at the same time, he is the most expensive pitcher on the slate by a wide margin. He is projected to be rostered by 40% of the field. So it is reasonable to think that maybe there's just not that much advantage in getting to a lot of him. Josiah Gray showing up here around 10x the field based on those top lineups we saw. That's not really surprising. Again, I don't love him, but it is a good matchup. He is a decent pitcher, and none of the cheap pitchers on this slate are great. Andrew Heaney, I mentioned, getting a bunch of ownership, and he projects the best of the group, but still has his flaws. You have Johan Oviedo getting a good amount of ownership for the Pirates. He certainly has his flaws. Neither of those guys are drastically better than Josiah Gray. So at 2% ownership, I don't mind getting to some of that. As far as players that we are most over or under the field on, Padres bats at the top. Not surprising given how much we're getting. We mentioned Josiah Gray as far as pitching goes. As far as players we're not getting as much of, Spencer Strider, singled him out. Christian Yelich projected for 11% ownership. We're only getting to about 1. So nothing really that stands out too much as far as like really big fades other than Strider. So pretty interesting slate. Again, we have to keep an eye on Coors Field. Also, I didn't mention it at the top, but links below this video, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Twitter. If you want to use this tool to improve your own lineups, check it out there. We have monthly and weekly pricing options available. Other than that, that's all I have for you today. Good luck on your lineups tonight. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.